Hello, and welcome to a grab and go opportunity put on by me, Christine, the teen librarian at the Jones Creek branch of the East Baton Rouge Parish Library System. Today, we will be learning embroidery as we stitch a small piece inspired by the Atchafalaya swamp. The materials you will need are an embroidery hoop, a square of fabric to embroider on, an embroidery needle, scissors, a pencil, an embroidery template or pattern, and brown, dark blue, light blue, dark green, light green, orange, and black embroidery floss. You may also like to have some colored pencils for the end. Let's get started. First, we're going to trace our design onto our fabric in the center of the square. I've put my fabric over the design, and now I'm going to lightly trace it with a pencil. Everything I traced with the pencil will stay on the fabric and can't be erased, so I'll draw very faint lines and not go in for details. And there we go. There's my basic embroidery pattern. Now it's time to stretch the fabric over our embroidery hoop. The hoop is in two pieces. The full hoop goes underneath. And then I'm going to either open or close the little screw at the top to fit it over the other hoop. Now I'm going to tighten this. And it should be nice and tight. I can even give it some little tugs on the edges, so it's like a little drum. Let's separate our thread so that we have a strand that's just 2 strands of embroidery floss instead of the full 6. This will make for more delicate lines and also mean you have more thread. I put my thumb between the part I'm pulling out and the base of the thread, and I keep the rest in my hand. If you have 3 people or 3 hands, one can hold each of these, and that will go much easier. I'll separate these 2 and pull down with my thumb, and then I'll stroke with the rest of my hand to get the kinks out of the thread that's still twisted together as a 6-ply. Pull, 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 stroke, and they're separate. This one is 4 and this one is 2. You can see the difference in thickness. Thread my needle. First, I'll see if the threads are the same length. These 2 pretty much are, so I'll twist them together, whichever direction they seem to want to twist. And then, with this pinched in one hand and my needle in the other, and not much showing above my thumbnail, I'll take the needle and slide it over both threads. Pull it so you have a long working and a short little bit on the other side. And at the other end of your long working, we'll tie a knot. I'll wrap the thread around 2 of my fingers and then pull it through once, twice, 3 times to make a nice big knot that won't slide through our embroidery cloth. With this light blue, we're going to start on the heron. We're going to do this because the heron uses one of my favorite stitches, the split stitch. I think it's a great beginner stitch, although of course straight stitch and the back stitch are also good beginner stitches. In fact, everything we do today is a good beginner stitch because this is for beginners. My needle, I will start with my hand underneath and I'll scrape it along the fabric until I find a spot I want to come up. I'll come up right here. I'll pull all of my thread through until I get to the knot. Then it'll stop. Next, I'll make a small stitch following the line I drew. Then I'll come up halfway between this stitch and this stitch, and actually between these two threads. Split stitch is best done when you can split the stitch equally in half. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring my needle up, and between the two flosses on either side, pull it all the way through, and then I'm going to make another stitch about the same length as my first one. Put it through right there. Pull the needle through. Find where my needle comes up, put it halfway between, and split the stitch. You can bring your hand in to try and help you get the stitch split. There we go. And I'm going to continue outlining the entire bird, except for its beak and its little feathers that come off the back of its head in this light blue. Now remember, the beak will be orange, so I'll stab through here and skip and put my needle over here where the neck starts again. On the back, that's a little long thread right here. And I'll continue doing split stitch along the rest of the body. After I've done all that stitching, my thread is twisting together, so I'm going to hang it and let it dangle, and it'll untwist itself. But also, we're done with our bird. So we can tie off our thread, snip off the ends, and move on to our next section. I'll use the needle to help me get the thread in there for a nice little knot, using the thread that we started with as the other half. There. We'll switch to orange thread and do the beak with the same stitch. The little stitches of blue. You don't have to, but I think it'll be a nice way of making sure everything joins up. And I'll go about halfway down the beak, stab up between the two stitches, all the way down the beak. And then I won't stab into this one, because where would I go with my next one? I'll actually come over here halfway through the beak and go back to the point of it. Then I'll come up halfway through the halfway, right here, and go all the way over to here. There's our little blue egret beak. It could have been a bit less stubby and longer, but it's definitely a bird. It's definitely a bird. I'll go to the back and tie the shortest little bit of color work off. All right, let's do some legs. I'm going to start at the bottom of this foot and come up. I want the top of the leg to be thicker than the bottom. like it would be on a chicken drumstick. So I'm going to stab up next to my first line and do a second line of stitches going down to its knee or elbow. There. Now I'll skip to its next foot right here. We're not actually doing the feet, those are below the water. We've decided that because it's convenient. There, 2 stork-like legs. Now we'll take our thread and we'll travel it up to the top, and we're going to learn a new stitch for the eye of the bird. It's called a French knot. We're going to stab our thread through at where we think the eyeball should be. And when it's all on this side, we're going to put our needle against the fabric and wrap the thread around 2 or 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then, while we're still keeping this taunt and this taunt, we're going to take our needle and go back through right next to where we came through in the first place. Still keeping this one taunt. Pull that needle through. And when it gets to the end, you have a little blobble as an eyeball. If you pull too tight or your tension isn't quite right, this will happen, and you'll just get a little stitch. And that could be fine too. It's like a little closed eye. Now I want to do these 2 little guys over here. So I'm going to start here and just do a simple stitch through. 1 and done. I'll do another one just above it at an angle. And there are the little head feathers of our egret. Now on the back, we did a bit of traveling, so our threads aren't as close to each other as they could be. I'll tie a knot somewhere in the middle. And it's good to leave a little bit of slack so that you aren't cramping your bird's style by pulling its head towards its feet. You can move what's in the center of your hoop to be what you're concentrating on at the moment. Start over here at this side of the trunk. I'm going to make a stitch. And then, when there's still a loop on the fabric, I'll hold that down with one thumb and make another stitch in between the first 2. Then pull everything tight. Now, I'll make another stitch. And when there's a loop, I'll flatten it down with my thumb. Come up between the 2 points. And then pull everything tight. All right, I've got that side done. I'm going to push my needle through the fabric, travel just that little ways on the back, come up over here, and keep on tracing the outline of my tree. All right, I finished the outline of my tree, but I still want to do a little bit of line work in the middle of it. So I'll stab through, travel a little bit, come up from underneath, like that, and trace these two little texture lines. Back one last time. Pull off my hoop for a moment, and I can tie the end of my thread to the beginning. And we almost ran out there. It would have been no problem if we did. After all, we have 2 more strands of 2-ply brown string. The next thing we'll do is a little sprig of grass, like a cattail, down here in the corner. I haven't drawn it in yet, so let's draft that right now. It'll be like there, there, and there. We'll do that in bright green. We'll center this part of our project, push down our hoop, and have a nice tight board to work on. I'll start down here at the bottom, pull my thread through, and we're going to do what may be the most beginner friendly of stitches, the running stitch. That's where you come up, you go down, you skip a little bit, and you come right back up again. And go down. And come back up again. You can even do this as a kind of scoop, where you go down and come back up again without putting your hand to the back of the fabric. Like that. And we're done. We did a little sprig of grass that could be a cattail if we put a little puffer on the top, or is just a little bit of swamp grass like this. We'll leave it as is. Let's do some chain stitch Spanish moss. I've threaded on some dark green thread, and we'll start at the top over here in the corner. You stab up through, pull your thread till you get to the knot. You remember to put a knot in, right? Stab back down near where you came up. You kind of want to straddle the line you drew for this stitch. Poke your needle back up on the one side, inside of the loop you held back. Tighten that down. Go, 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 go. And then do another stitch off to the side. Pull that in, holding back a loop with your thumb. The only thing holding this in place is the next stitch. This is just a loop, but it does a great effect. So we'll come back up on one side of our drawn line, pull till it makes a small loop, put our needle back in, go down, hold a loop with our thumb, come back up around here, pull that until it's a small loop, go back down, hold the rest with our thumb, come back up, and this is the end of this strand of Spanish moss. So we'll just come back up, tighten it down, and go back down beneath that. All done. It does look like a chain. Let's do a next one. And done. Now, my thread ends here, but it began over here. So I'm going to wrap it around a few things to travel it back to where I started. Here's where we are now. We could be done, but wait. I want to teach you one more stitch. Actually, 2 more stitches. And they're going to be some water down at the bottom. First, we'll get out some of the Heron thread we used over here. Should still have a lot of that left. He was a tiny little bird. And we'll thread that on. We are going to do a whipped back stitch. Step 1, do a back stitch. Let's learn that, shall we? Let's go here. Not the other end. Go up, go down. Then go up, a space away, go down. Go up, a space away, go down. Right back in the hole you came out of before. For now, we're not going to tie that off because we're going to do the whipped part of the whipped back stitch. And for that, we're going to use our final color of thread, the dark blue. And I'm going to come up just to the side of our light blue. And then I'm going to take my needle and go underneath the thread, but not through the fabric. Then in the next one, and the next one, and I'm going to continue just wrapping around or whipping around each stitch. And the entire reason we're doing this is to give that cool two-toned color to our water. At the end, I'll stab through close to where we ended our light blue and bring it to the back. Now for this one, I'll tie our light blue thread and our dark blue thread together. And now we are done. We have done a whipped back stitch, a stem stitch, a split stitch, a French knot, chain stitch, and running stitch. We've done so many different kinds of stitches. Congratulations! Of course, these were only suggestions. You could have done this entire thing in a running stitch or whipped back stitch. You don't really have to follow exactly what I do. But now, let's get this all neat in the back. What we're going to do is do a running stitch along the edges of our fabric. about 1 inch to 2 inches out from the hoop. Actually, there is one more thing you could do. Before you gather all this in at the end, take out your hoop and lie your fabric flat on your table. This can give your work some added dimension and full color. Right next to where I started and cinch this in like this. Then all of my edges will neatly get folded into the middle. I'll pull my needle off and tie this in a knot. So there's your back, there's your front. You can use an additional piece of floss that you have left over as a loop to tie and hang it. Congratulations! This has been a long, but I hope educational and enjoyable journey in embroidery. Thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Visit the library for more grab-and-go opportunities and engage with us on social media. Goodbye.